Hello, I'm recording this videocast specifically for students who are just starting the Germany 1871 to 1990 course, just to make sure you're secure on certain key concepts, and in particular those three words that we're looking at on the screen here. I'm going to start off with this particular diagram. This is what we call a social structure, a social pyramid. What I've tried to do here is just sort of capture the traditional, the typical 19th century power structure in the German region of Europe. Now, as we saw in the previous lesson, by the 1860s, there was no country called Germany. There were, in fact, 38 different, separate, independent states, each ruled by a different monarch. And what you must try to imagine here is we are looking at the sort of social composition, the people living in one German state. Now, as you can see, it's useful to view the social pyramid as three different classes. So we have the upper classes, who you've got the basic text there, are a titled class. The upper classes. Traditionally, we think, for example, of kings and queens. They can be other types. They can be princes, they can be grand dukes, they can be dukes. In fact, in Germany, there was a mixture. Some of the German states were ruled by kings, some princes, some grand dukes, some dukes. What is distinctive about the upper class is that they are, or they were, very, very powerful. They held the political power in the German states. Their wealth was based on land. Most of the monarchs were big landowners, and certainly in the 1860s, although most of the German states did have elected parliaments, the elected parliaments, again, got these keywords on the screen in front of you. The elected parliaments, which represented the lower classes, the middle classes and the working classes, the elected parliaments on the whole had very little power. Real power lay in the hands of a small group of titled, privileged kings, princes, etc., etc., etc. Okay, that's where political power lay. However, times were changing, and so we also have a growing middle class. Now, the middle classes, as you can see, their wealth was based on industry, and they were an emerging, educated, ambitious, growing social class. So at the start of the 19th century, they were relatively small, but by the 1860s, the middle classes were growing in numbers, but also in terms of ambition. This is because they were a product of one of the great changes of the 19th century, which was the Industrial Revolution. What the Industrial Revolution did is it changed the whole basis of society. It led to the formations of towns and cities, and it led to the creation of new social classes, in particular the middle classes and the working classes. Now, the middle classes, they did not have political power, as we've just said. Real power at this time tended to lie with the old upper classes. The middle classes aspired for more power. They wanted the upper classes to share power with them through elected parliaments. So they were pushing for more influence in the running of the country. Now, those values are what we call liberal. That's liberalism. Liberalism is where power is shared with the lower classes, with the lower ranks, in particular the middle classes. Then, of course, at the very bottom of the social pyramid, we've got the working classes. Now, the working classes, like the middle classes, are also a product of the Industrial Revolution. The working classes are basically the factory workers, the labourers who are grafting on the at the machines in the factories. Poor people, lower classes, a product of industrialisation. Now, the key word there that you're looking at is the fact that at this early stage in the 1860s, they were relatively uneducated. They were rapidly growing, but because they were uneducated, they lacked political ambition at this particular stage. But as we move forward through the decades towards the end of the 19th century, the working classes became more aspirational, and they, like the middle classes, believed that power should be shared with the lower ranks, with the lower classes. But the most extreme working classes that emerged were the so-called socialists, and they felt that real power should lie with the working classes, not with the middle classes. But they will be more important as we move through the course. Okay, at this particular stage in the 1870s, they are a growing and increasingly important social class. We'll move on to the next slide. So here's a map of Germany as it was in the 1870s, and you can see the notes along the side. 38 separate independent German states. Okay, the most powerful were Austria, the largest, Prussia, as you can see. I'll do it in a different colour so you can see it. As you can see, Prussia, represented by blue, was actually spread geographically from west to east. There were other areas which were Prussian, and also the third one was Bavaria. They were the most powerful, but there were 35 other very small German states, which you can see on the map. Now, most of those states were authoritarian in their structure, so they were like the model we just talked about. Okay, so some of those states were ruled by kings, some were ruled by princes, some by grand dukes, some by dukes, etc. Okay, so in other words, they were all ruled by a small group of privileged upper classes who held their position by birth. They were ruled by monarchs who were very reluctant to share power with the growing middle classes beneath them. So power lay with the upper classes. Let's move on to the next slide. So what I've just done there is I've represented that in a different way. So effectively, that social pyramid in which power lay at the top with the upper classes is replicated 38 times. You've got 38 small separate countries, all German, and in each of them power lay with the upper classes. Okay, so the ruler of Austria was actually an emperor. The ruler of Prussia was a king, the King of Prussia. In the 1860s, his name was King Wilhelm I, King William I. And then you've got the King of Bavaria. Okay, so in the 1860s, he was called King Ludwig, and 35 other small states, all ruled in a very, very similar way. But tensions were appearing. The middle classes were not only liberal, pushing for more power within their state, but they were also nationalist. Now, what does that mean? Well, the middle classes felt that, if you think about it, the middle classes, their wealth is based on developing industry. They felt that having 38 small, separate little Germanys didn't make any sense. If there was a single united Germany, then it would open up more markets, for example, for them to sell their goods, to buy and sell. It would make trade much easier. Having 38 separate states, if you're the middle classes in one small tiny state, it was very difficult to really build up much prosperity. So the middle classes were very much in favour of the 38 states merging together to form a united Germany. And as you can see on the notes on the left there, they were very much influenced in particular by 1860, the year 1860, because in 1860, before 1860, to the south there had never been a united Italy. There were lots of small separate Italian states, and in 1860 Italy unified to become a single united country. And the middle classes of Germany could see the benefits of that. But the issue, of course, is how do you bring about a united Germany? How are you going to make that happen? What are the obstacles going to be, and what would a united Germany look like? Let's move on to the next slide. So I've got the map of Germany there with a question mark indicating, well, if you're going to have a united Germany, what would it look like? Well, looking at the pyramid, there's our social pyramid at the beginning. Let's start with the upper classes. Okay, if you're an upper class German, and there are 38 different monarchs. Okay, what are the pros and cons of having a united Germany? Well, the pros are a single united Germany would be a much more powerful country than having 38 separate small Germanys. In particular, be mindful here to the west you've got a very, very powerful country, France. Now if you imagine France, very powerful, to her east lies 38 relatively small German states. That very much played in France's favour, and it meant that 38 separate German states felt very threatened by France. So having a single united Germany with one monarch and one army would provide better security against powerful neighbours such as France. That's the pro, that's the advantage. However, the disadvantage is, or the question mark is, well, who would rule that new Germany? Okay, would one of the 38 monarchs become the new German leader? In which case, what would happen to the 37 other monarchs? Would they lose would they simply disappear? Would they lose influence? So clearly those obstacles would need to be ironed out in order to have a united Germany. Let's move on. So that is the upper classes. And let's move on to the middle classes. Well, the middle classes, we've said, were strongly in favour of unification. In many ways, they were the main driving force for the reasons we just said, in particular economic reasons, reasons to do with generating more wealth for themselves. However, if there's going to be a united Germany, they don't want a new united Germany to be an authoritarian system. In other words, power lying just at the upper level. What they want is a new Germany in which the middle classes and the upper classes hold power jointly. In other words, they want elected parliaments to have more political power, and presumably if there's going to be one united Germany, there will be a national parliament elected by all the German people from across all of the 38 separate areas, and the middle classes believe that the upper classes should share power with that elected parliament, and in particular with the middle classes inside that elected parliament. Problem is, will the upper classes be willing to do that, and which upper classes will be ruling the new Germany? And then finally you've got the working classes. Now, as I say, most are uneducated, Okay, they're a growing group. They're the largest part of the pyramid. Increasingly, millions and millions of working classes appearing now with the growth of industrialisation. What do they want? Well, most of them are uneducated. Those working classes who were educated sufficiently to have knowledge about these ideas were on the whole prepared to follow the lead of the middle classes and support the idea of a united national Germany. However, some of them, called socialists, again in favour of a united Germany perhaps, but they also believed that the working classes, the group at the bottom of the pyramid, should also hold power in the new Germany. In fact, the most extreme socialists believed that the working classes should hold all of the power in the united Germany. So there again was another future obstacle. So all of these question marks are important because after Germany became united in 1871, which we'll look at in the next lesson, these were the difficulties that needed to be ironed out, and they didn't disappear, and they continued to hang on for many, many years. So our final slide. The lead in creating this united Germany was taken by Prussia. So there's Prussia, our largest pyramid. And the lead in creating a united Germany and pulling all of those states together was taken by the rulers of Prussia. And again, we're just going back to the left of that particular slide. Okay, the rulers of Prussia were the King of Prussia, King Wilhelm I. You can see a picture of him. But most importantly, beneath him, his head of government. Now, the head of government in Prussia was called Otto von Bismarck. Now, as you can see, as we've said, Prussia was the largest, or the joint equal largest of the German states, okay, matched by Austria, but it was certainly the most powerful of the separate German states. Prussia had a very, very strong and powerful army. And our story that really begins our course begins in the year 1870, when Prussia went to war against France. So again, we look at our map here and we think, what basically does this mean? Well, basically, Prussia, there's France in the west, France, and Prussia to the east. Well, Prussia went to war against France in the year 1870. And out of that war, the outcome of that war, and France was defeated, Prussia defeated France convincingly. The outcome of that war was that the 38 German states pulled together behind Prussia's leadership and became a united Germany. So that's the end of this presentation, which leads into the real start of the course, the unification of Germany, and what the new united Germany looked like. Thank you.